This week is the second week in the so-called Reggae month. But more importantly, this week marks the birthday week of Robert Nesta Marley. And for me, as a man who have followed Marley's career for almost its entirety, I would say that Jamaica is lucky, blessed even, to have been the birthplace of Robert Nesta Marley. Here's a man who was unswerving in his beliefs, cemented in his convictions, and committed to his role as a messenger for the people of Jamaica. Not only that, his was the voice for the dispossessed people all around the world. I grew up in Jamaica in the 1960s, and I was only 7 years old when the Wailers' single Simmer Down hit the streets of Kingston. This song basically brought the Wailers into the consciousness of Jamaicans, and it would take Marley maybe another 10 years before they would become finally entrenched as a musical force in Jamaica. Robert Nesta Marley was the de facto leader of this very talented group, and he would spout a message in his music that resonated across the island of Jamaica to the four corners of the earth. His message would become pretty potent, and for a young man, he had so much things to say. Marley was born on February 6, 1945 to Norval Sinclair Marley and Cedella Malcolm at 9 Mile in the parish of St. Ann in Jamaica. A country youth, he was more on the retiring side in his early years, but by his early teen years, it was clear to him what he wanted to do: music. His mother, Cedella, stated that as he approached his mid-teen years, he one day gave her his school books and implored her to give them away to some other child who would make better use of them. At the time, Bonnie Livingston was also living at 9 Miles, and the two would make the trek to Kingston in pursuit of a music career. They both ended up in Trenchtown. It was the early 1960s, and Jamaican youths had become captivated by the sound of recorded music. So much so that Federal Records Studio had begun to enjoy steady growth in their recording business as the ska sound eclipsed the earlier Mento beat. The now established talent shows were basically throwing up newer and newer talent each week, while newer players were entering the industry as record producers. Marley would kind of wet his feet as a recording artist with one such player, Leslie Kong, who was operating at his newly established Beverly's Record Shop in downtown Kingston. It was with Beverly's that Marley recorded 3 songs: Terror, One Cup of Coffee, and Judge Not. Marley would then go on to connect with talent developer Joe Higgs, who had himself enjoyed a fair amount of success as a recording artist. Higgs operated a vocal coach. He operated kind of as a vocal coach, and he was also involved in basically threading singing groups together. Groups of youngsters who were basically roaming about the place in Trenchtown where he resided. One such group that was put together by Bob Marley labeled themselves the Teenagers. The group would later be renamed the Wailing Wailers, and still, later they dropped the Wailing and became just simply the Wailers. At the time when Jamaican music was in its early stage, this group would go on to become one of the biggest singing groups coming out of Trenchtown in Kingston. Now, the Wailers hit with Simmer Down, which was a ska tune that basically tore the streets of Kingston apart. This record was produced by Clement Sir Coxsone Dodd. At the time, he had just recently opened his own studio at Brentford Road, and this song stayed on the Jamaican charts for some 2 months. It stayed there as #1 on the charts for 2 months. In addition to the Simmer Down, the Wailers also recorded a couple of other songs, including It Hurts to Be Alone and I'm Still Waiting. Now, within a few months of that, though, Brathwaite, Kelso, and Cherry Smith departed the Wailers. This would have been 1966, leaving the core of the group, the core trio, Marley, Peter, and Bonnie, to function as the Wailers. Now, the relationship with Coxsone was basically short-lived. By 1966, they had basically parted company. So Marley left Coxsone 1966, and he'd started his own record label, Wail and Soul record label, and he went to the United States to join his mother for a bit, work in a different kind of odd jobs. I think his mother was living in Delaware, and he would go there to see what he could make of himself, try to raise some money to try to finance the development of the label. Returned and basically dived back into his record business with earnest. In fact, it was 2 times that he actually left, and on the second occasion when he went away and realized that the Vietnam War was kind of chopping at his heels, and him flashed back into Kingston and resumed what he knew. Now, Marley would basically connect with Scratch Perry. Scratch, who had only recently left Coxsone for the same reason that Marley left him. Went and did some work with Joe Gibbs. Him too and Joe Gibbs fall out over the same reason, money. And so he decided to come and hang out his own shingle. And of course, he brought with him his experience as a man in the, putting the sounds together and stuff, and decided to set up his own studio. Now, Scratch recorded some of what I call some of the most potent work that Marley himself put out. In fact, Scratch actually recorded the album Soul Rebel, and that would have been about Marley's 3rd album. The first 2 was with Coxsone. This album, though, Soul Rebel, was recorded without Marley's and the Wailers' permission. And not only did Scratch do this recording, but he basically licensed the record, the album, to Trojan Records outside of the knowledge of the Wailers. And this decision of his would hurt the relationship that he had been building with Marley and the Wailers. Now, as I said, the 1970s is opening up, and Marley is back in Jamaica and in earnest, putting songs together himself and his fellow Wailers, Bonnie and Peter. And during this time, even though Scratch had this little falling out, they still did some recording work with Scratch. And although Scratch never had no studio, I think Scratch was using Randy's record studio at the time. But they put out quite a couple of sides. Some songs like Lick Samba, Screwface, Mr. Brown, And of course, one of my favorite songs from the Wailers catalog, Trenchtown Rock. Now, the potency of these lyrics increased the overseas demand for Marley's work. Yeah, so I was saying the potency of these lyrics increased the overseas demand for the Wailers' work. And in 1972, the Wailers entered into a deal with CBS Records and embarked on a tour with American soul singer Johnny Nash. Of course, the tour went badly and left the Wailers without money and stranded in London. Of course, penniless, they went, well, not they, Marley, who had a more personal relationship with Blackwell. Marley went to Blackwell's office and negotiated a loan between £3,000 and £4,000 to help them get back to Kingston, Jamaica. Of course, them traveling as a band, so them have a whole heap of equipment and, you know, traveling not cheap, but £4,000 is still a strong amount of money in 1972. Having said that, Blackwell provided them with the £4,000, and the understanding was that in return, the group would do an album for Blackwell. Of course, despite the rude boy reputation that they had, the Wailers returned to Kingston and honored the deal, delivering the album Catch a Fire. The album became the Wailers' first major label album and enjoyed worldwide release in April of 1973, packaged like a rock record with a unique zipper lighter lift up, and initially sold about 14 to 15,000 units. It didn't make Marley a big star, but the album received a positive critical reception from record buyers, and this was soon followed by a second album called Burning, an album that I particularly like, which included one of my favorite Marley anthems, Get Up, Stand Up, and of course, I Shot the Sheriff, a song which would later be covered by Eric Clapton. And this song also helped to, well, apart from just being covered by Clapton, it became a huge hit for Eric Clapton back in the United States, but it also helped to expand or broaden Marley's personal profile. Now, by 1973, the Wailers had begun to gain significant traction back home in Jamaica, as well as raising the eyebrows of music enthusiasts overseas. Of course, Catch a Fire, we talked about that. It was followed by the album Burning, and in 1974, the Wailers released the monumental Natty Dread album. Much of the Wailers' output during this period reflected the revolutionary tone of Jamaica and the youths in Jamaica in particular, the youths in the ghettos during this period. It was a period of political turmoil somewhat, and of course, for a lot of these youngsters, nothing gone. And Marley and the messaging of his music basically trumpeted the feelings of these young people, dispossessed, not happening for them within Kingston ghettos. And what it did at the same time, it was raising Marley's profile within the fabric of the Jamaican youth community, particularly among, underprivileged youth. And by this time, Marley had now started to become the target of the microscope of people not only back there in Jamaica, but people elsewhere outside of Jamaica. Now, by this time too, Marley is now wearing them dreadlocks, and the dreadlocks sort of provided a sort of a revolutionary image, if you will, of the man. Sort of likening him to the Che Guevara of Cuba of the earlier years. And this is the revolutionary image that he struck up, with his flowing locks and his profile. And of course, backing that up with this potent musical lyrics. 1974, and the Wailers, who is now, the Wailers now touring heavily, although there's a sort of a rift brewing between the members of the group, and they decided that, something, between Bonnie and Peter, they were not too happy with some of the tours that they were doing. And, in time, the group would split. But in 1974, they were slated to do 17 shows and to open for Sly and the Family Stone, which was at the time the number one black musical act in the United States of America. Of course, Marley basically showed them up. I think this was an opening event where he opened for them at Madison Square Garden in New York. And after Marley performed, basically more than half of the audience in the garden left, because that's who they came to see, Bob Marley. And ultimately, the Sly and the Family Stone basically kicked the Wailers off of the tour. Of course, in response to that, since they were there and they had some dates, they basically rented a bus and they did a bus tour across the United States. In fact, that tour, if I'm not mistaken, was responsible for another favorite album of mine, a live album called Babylon by Bus. Now, after that, the group split. Peter, Bonnie decided that they were ready to go pursue their own solo careers. And Marley continued to tour. This time, I think he was on a tour in the United States and he needed to find a backup, and he reached for the I-Trees, Judy, Marcia, and Rita, who were also on their own little tour, and they, gave that up and joined the thing. And as Marley was made a famous comment, anybody who stand up behind him when he play, are them are the Wailers. And so the I-Trees filled the role, backing role, as the as the Wailers, if you will. 1975, Marley made that major breakthrough with his first hit outside of Jamaica, No Woman No Cry. And he followed this up with his breakthrough album in 1976 with Rastaman Vibration. This album basically opened up the United States to Marley. And of course, the rest, as you know, is history. In 1976, Marley, a crucial time in Jamaica politically, and the country was always a hotbed of politics from time to time. But the latter half of the 1970s was particularly crucial. What we call the ideological political practices led to a sharp divide among Jamaicans at home. And of course, the gang and political violence of the period basically made life very, very difficult for a number of Jamaicans. And of course, Marley, being who he was, would have gotten caught up in that. One side wanted him to stomp for them, the other side wanted the same thing. Marley never ever had the personality to be involved in any kind of politics. Did his best to maintain his distance, but one night in December 1976, 2 days before the famous Smile Jamaica concert, where did I get Smile Orange? The famous Smile Jamaica concert, organized in an effort to ease the tension between the warring political factions. And 2 nights before the concert, gunman basically attacked the Marleys at home at 56 Hope Road, where he had his studio and, his family. Well, not the entire family, but Rita was there. His manager was there with him, and so on. And they suffered a gun attack. And in the course of the gun attack, both Bob and Rita got injured. Don Taylor himself, the manager, got shot as well. And the rest of the Wailers splurt. Everybody run away, So Marley, much to the surprise of Jamaicans everywhere, decided that he was still gonna go through with the concert, and he performed the concert. The Zappo band actually backed the concert, which was attended by some 80,000 people from all about, Jamaicans and people from all over the world who come in to take in a Bob Marley concert. And at the end of the concert, immediately following that, Marley basically splurted. He headed, I think he went to the Cayman Islands and then eventually flew to London, where he went into a sort of a self-imposed exile. And because while he was in England, he spent 2 years in England. And while there, he recorded the 2 seminal albums, Exodus and Kaya. Exodus stayed on the British album charts for 56 consecutive weeks, and out of Exodus, they had some 4 UK hit singles: Exodus, Waiting in Vain, Jammin', and of course, One Love. The One Love was a sort of a off-take of Curtis Mayfield's big song, People Get Ready. Marley had a love for Curtis Mayfield music, and if you as a Marley enthusiast, you go back to his concerts of or his recordings of the early 1960s period when him recording with Coxsone, he would sample that catalog heavily during that period. So here again, he dusted off One Love, which he had actually done in that same mid-60s period with Coxsone. In 1978, when the political violence started to get really, really unbearable, a delegation went to London and appealed to Marley to come back to Jamaica to head up this One Love peace concert, 1978. Massive concert. I remember it like it was yesterday because I was at the foot of the stage as a little young boy. I would have been around 19 years old, and don't remember how I got at the foot of the stage, but I was there. And that concert was something to remember. Marley basically brought the house down, closed the show, and he brought on Siaga and Michael Manley on the stage where they basically shake hands and whatever. Memorable. Of course, suffice to say, the peace never lasted. We went to elections a couple years after, and the gun violence just exploded, But be that as it may, Marley played his role, At the end of the concert, he basically disappeared and spent the next couple of years touring heavily. One of the heaviest touring schedule that I've seen for any artist anywhere. And Marley would have basically circled the world about 2 or 3 times. 2 or 3 times during this period. He went everywhere: Europe, Africa, the Americas, both North America and Canada and the United States, the United Kingdom. He played everywhere, And some of these were back-to-back dates, you know. So here is a man who, in my opinion, has done more for, as far as putting the name of Jamaica on the map than any other Jamaican. Marley popularized the Rastafarian culture, and he threaded that together with reggae music and became the island's cultural ambassador, both in terms of his music and his Rastafarian beliefs. And to this day, I do not believe that there is any other Jamaican, not even the late Marcus Garvey, who has contributed to the country's development in a way that Marley has. You know, Marley would succumb to melanoma on the 11th of May in 1981 and was buried at his birthplace back in 9 Mile, St. Ann. And of course, he was accorded the nation's second highest honor, the Order of Merit. And I believe it's about time that the government take it to the next level and make him a national hero. More time.
Hi there. If you enjoyed that clip, go on over to our website at yardmedia.com, where you can watch the entire broadcast at your leisure. And while you're there, why don't you check out our other reggae music features? And before you leave, pick up some of our Jamaican reggae merchandise, and hey, don't forget to tell your friends.
My name is Garth, otherwise known as Big G.
My name is Richie.